see in my slideshow had to go work. Special music now, but I had been talking with a dear friend of all of ours. I had discovered that Bailey had written a song and sung it for the ladies' prayer group. And I thought, this is just not right that she doesn't share it with us. And I asked her if she'd come and share it with us before I did my talk today, and she has agreed. So Bailey, this is the time, and if you want to introduce your song in any way, you feel free to tell us the story behind it, or you can just grab a guitar and go to work here. Thank you very much. You can use mine or Chuck's, either one. So I don't know that the neck thickness is much difference from one to the other.
I wasn't actually sure if I was going to sing it, but I brought it to share with Tim, and I guess I will. I have not, I haven't really practiced it that much this week. But we'll
You
see.
mean you came just to show me the song,
Yep.
not to sing?
But
I had
then
asked you
Vivian
to
told me,
sing, so
so-
I presumed when you were here you were planning to. Well,
But I
sorry
will.
about putting you on the spot, Bailey.
No, it's fine. That's the only way I'm gonna actually get better at that, I guess. So, anyways, this song is only 2 weeks old. I wrote it 2 weeks ago, and Linda Hunt had us challenge us to write a Psalms, and I spent 2 weeks trying to write a Psalms, and nothing came to me. And I prayed about it, and nothing came to me. And then I was at church, and I told her, maybe I should try singing or writing a song or something. Maybe it will come. And that Sunday, I wrote it. And the next day, I found the tune because I couldn't sleep that night, and I kept hearing the tune. And so it's called "Take Me Home." Do you pick? What pick?
On the deck there. Right there on the body.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Here we go. Where am I? I feel ashamed as I call your name, knowing I've got nothing to say. Feel like wasting your time, and that seems like such a crime. Even though I know you are the way. Ooh, sorry, my guitar broke. Listen to the lies that Satan supplies. Get stuck in terror and fear, but I know you're the bearer, and I just need to draw you near. But I let me remain in all this pain. I'm gonna sit down. You're strapped to. I can't be changed. I plead my thoughts to be rearranged. Give me, Lord, the strength to forgive and the faith to be fearless. Oh, how I need you to be with me, Lord. Headstrong, self-reliant, and proud are the stones that tied up my feet. The greatest weapon the enemy has, endowed by my own self-defeat. Sometimes I just wonder, why, God, why? Why do you drag me upwards as I tie this weight to my feet? I'm a slave, would you set me free? I'm drowning in my ignorance, but I know you and read the evidence. Won't listen to the as my child, I've paid it all. So trust me, let your pride fall. Lord, I'm a slave, would you set me free? I'm leaning in and letting go. I need you, dear Lord, please take me home. That was a little rough.
And hardly did I realize what a spot I was putting you in, but you did a fabulous job. Thank you so much. You did it.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
doing
for
it.
sharing that with us, Bailey. Just in case. What else you say is up here? Oh, yeah. Just in case you need them. You never know when your daughter's going to call. All right. Well, the verse that was read from the end of Matthew talked about Jesus calling us to go out into all the world and to spread the gospel. Well, some people do really well at going from place to place and preaching the gospel to those who will listen. Others don't have quite so much an opportunity to do that all the time. And once in a while we get an opportunity, like I did, to go do some practical thing to help with the spreading of the gospel in the process of helping to put a little church together. And of course, as I was explaining to the children in my story, my part of the project was the tiling of the church floor. And you've got not only the tile, but you've got the mortar, which, as most of you know, is referred to in most construction circles as mud. And so I decided that today I would title my talk, Missionary of Mud. So here we go. Let's see if this thing works. Sure enough, that's pretty good. It's just the same on both screens. That's a good thing to see. And that way I only need to look back. So this is the group that I went to Mexico with. Most of us are from, in fact, all of us are from either Walla Walla or Moses Lake. Probably a few more of them from Moses Lake. The reason being that the couple that organizes this trip, that's their church, is in Moses Lake. Many years ago, he was pastor at the Kennewick Church when I was a member there. And probably 37 or 8 years ago, I went with him and his wife on a trip to Mexico for my first time. And now I've done it 6 different times, so they're always planning trips to Mexico. They're not with Maranatha or anybody else. They just kind of plan their own little thing. They go down there every year and look around, talk with the conference president. Where do you have little churches that need some work done on them? We can bring a group down and help do stuff. So some of the churches, we start from the very beginning and stack blocks on top of a foundation that we've poured. Others, we show up that other people may have started, but they just never been able to get the building finished, and we'll show up and help finish the building. Some of them we started a few years earlier and they never got finished, so we come back and help finish it. So we may have done all parts of it depending on what. They've been doing this for many, many years. I've only done it 6 times now, but today I'm going to talk about my most recent, which was just a couple of weeks ago. So actually a week and a half ago that I got home. So this group was a lot of fun to be with. It's pretty much the same group every year, so we become very, very well acquainted with each other. We flew to the southern tip of the Baja. So if any of you know where Cabo San Lucas is, we were basically in that location to start. We spent the first night there because we got there kind of late in the day. The next day we took our rented cars and we began driving north. And in the process, we were able to drive past 3 or 4 churches that we had worked on in years previously, because we were going about 4 hours or more north from Cabo by car. So this was the first of the churches that I helped work on in the recent years, not the one from 35 years ago, but in recent years. The building that I actually helped on is what you can look through the doorway there and see a building out back. And that's the one that I helped work on a few years ago. This church is in La Paz, and those buildings out in the front are used for both classrooms, and they have a lot of community service, medical, dental clinics, and things like that that take place in the rooms up front. This is the church that we worked on 3 years ago, and you can see it's still in the concrete stage. They haven't got it painted or anything, and inside is just as rough as it was when we left there. So one of these days, I suspect we'll be back to do some more work on that. This is last year's project, and it was one that had been started well ahead of time, and we came back and did the finishing touches. So we added the room that's high up on top in the back. They wanted a little caretaker's apartment built, so they had somebody who'd keep an eye on the place. But then we did the painting and the electrical, and we tiled the Sabbath school classrooms, which are in the lower section of that back building. The bathrooms are back there. We put tile in all of those, got toilets and sinks set and all that good stuff. We did not get the inside of the church finished, but we left them money to hire people to come and lay tile. So the center of the inside of the church did get finished ultimately, and that's what they have to worship in. You can see it's a fairly small little building, but there's a group of people who are very, very happy to have a nice little facility. This one we started in 1744. Actually, I thought it interesting that nearly 300 years ago, the Catholics were doing the same thing we're doing now. They were coming into the Baja and building churches. Somehow theirs look a little more noticeable than ours are, but it was pretty cool to look at some of these old buildings that are still standing there. There were these kinds of churches scattered here and there across the Baja. We showed up at our hotel, and my goodness, I thought we were going on a mission trip, but this is what we had. I discovered the reason for that was that this town we went to is right on the main highway from Tijuana to Cabo, and coming through this city of 40-some thousand people, there was not a single motel. And so somebody had the vision to build a luxury motel along this highway so that people would have some place to stop. And since we needed motel for a couple of weeks, this was all that was available. So here we are. You see there's a door there on the left-hand side of the picture. I thought, well, I'll go out the door and look at the patio out back. And that's what we had out back. So it was pretty tough accommodations, to say the least. But it's not bad being a missionary at times. The city looked nothing like this. It was just mostly dirt streets, and if it wasn't dirt, there was a lot of dirty streets. But every now and again, you'd see somebody out there with a broom and a dustpan just sweeping the spot in front of their little store. So there were people who were concerned about it. This couple here were I guess he's the head elder of the church that we came to work on. We've worked with him several years in the past. He's a superb contractor, knows every step of construction with all this concrete block and stuff that we know, and he also spent a few years in the U.S., so he speaks pretty decent English. So it really, really helps to have a local who knows what's going on. This happened to be his church. It's the first time we've worked on his church, and so it was fun to be with him and his wife. she was extra special in that every morning that we were there, with the exception of the 2 Sabbath mornings, she prepared breakfast for us. And every morning we had beans and rice, and it could be rolled tacos, or it could be tamales, or it could be chilaquiles, or whatever. She just had the most delicious foods for us every morning for breakfast. There was a really sad story, though, that took place while we were there. You see a metal framework that's kind of in the background. They were building a cover over the patio so that they could have shade there, and they were hoping to get it done by the time we arrived. Didn't quite make it. They had one more day's worth of work to do on it. So after our first breakfast and we left for the church, a couple of church members were helping the owner up there trying to finish up that little shade awning, and one of the church members fell off the scaffolding, landed wrists first, but hit his head on the concrete, and about 6 or 7 hours later died. It was just a terrible start to our trip, just put a damper on things. But the host family, they pulled themselves together. I don't understand how, and they continued to have us come and fix food for us every morning. He continued to work with us every day. He took 2 weeks off just so he could work with us throughout this time. And it was quite a thing. So this is just some of the stuff in his backyard. You know, we were in a tropical area, and it was just kind of cool to see. So here he is with our fearless leader, the two of them together. They've been close friends for a long time. Sandy is very fluent in Spanish, and her husband spent many years in Colombia as missionaries long ago, like 45 years ago and beyond. In fact, their 47-year-old son was born down there. So yeah, they were there a long time ago, and they both speak very fluent Spanish. This is just some of the food we had every morning. Lots of papaya every morning. We had a ton of papaya, beans and rice and whatnot. So we certainly didn't want for something good to eat. This is almost like a breakfast haystack in a sense. It's got corn chips under there, but then all kinds of stuff piled on top of it. You can't go wrong. Here he is cutting open a fresh coconut for us because they just happen to have those all over the place as well. We finally got to the church. And this is what the building looked like on the outside. You can see that it has been stuccoed, but not finished on the stucco. Inside looked like this. It was just kind of a dark cave. But the walls were up, stucco on, the floors were smooth and ready for tile. He had framed in the ceiling and put plywood up there. He wanted a solid ceiling, and I guess he got one. But, you know, we have now to come in and get going on it. So first thing that happens, of course, is the painters got to work. And they're trying to get these walls painted because they know I'm trying to get tile on the floor, and they want to beat me. So we figured out if you really were to look close down there to the front of the picture, you might see a couple of tiles between those two kids laying right up against the platform. I was just getting started with my first row of tile, and I said, I'm going to strike out an area here. I'm going to leave 5 feet exposed on each side so you can work on the walls. But the middle section, as I start working my way back, you got to clear out. You just can't work there anymore. And you know, that method worked pretty well. These guys are getting the trim primed and painted up there. We had a number of kids. This is the girl that was helping me with tile at times. This young guy here, he was such a delight to have on the trip. The older guy down on his knees, I can't believe it. He worked on his knees on that concrete for hours and hours a day. He can hardly stand up straight as it is, and he was standing up crookeder at the end of each day, I'll tell you, but he was just a worker. We would occasionally have a little worship in there in the morning before we got on to the other parts. You can see that they've got a little bit of primer on the walls up front. Here's some guys working on the outside of the church, getting the stucco cleaned up around the bottom so they can prime and paint. And after 2 days, the outside of the church was all white. It was just an amazing change to look at. You can see those first couple of rows of tile that I put down. We're going to start progressing back. Here you see those 2 kids at work. The young boy, Isaac, on the side there with a spray bottle in his hand. And in the back you can see Isabella with a trowel in her hand, and she's spreading mud on the tiles. I'm putting mud on the floor. I told you about Emiliano. His job was to throw some of that mud out there on the floor ahead of me so I could spread it around as we were getting the tile put down. Our plan was to build, those who weren't working inside the building were supposed to build a kitchen onto the side of where the Sabbath school rooms were. But the property that was supposed to have been purchased by the time we got there, they had not yet gotten the papers signed on it, and they were afraid to start building until they had that property completely and surely in hand. So it's like, what do we do with the extra people that were supposed to build this kitchen? Well, the first couple of days, they went over to the host's house and just did some projects in his yard. And here they're building a little platform where he wanted to have a little outdoor, I say outdoor, I hope you understand, it'll still be closed in, but a bathroom, a toilet outside where they can just from the patio go and use the toilet without having to go in the house. So they're building a little platform there. And here you can see the finished platform, and up on the top you just have a little tiny 4-foot square building with a single toilet inside of it, just a place you can slip into when you're out there in the patio. Some of the others got busy with trimming on all of they had some of the most unique landscape around there, but they're just hard at work at his place. Here you can see we're getting more tile laid. Church is starting to look, the walls are all painted white now. That's taken place. Then they found a project a couple hours away where those who weren't able to start building on that church, they found a little church that needed some bad help with it. And they said, let's go up and spend a couple of days up there and see if we can spruce that place up. So they're driving up there, and they found this sign along the way. I didn't get to go because I'm back laying tile on the floor. They found this sign that says, this is the end of the longest straight stretch of highway in the Americas, 168 kilometers, i.e. 100 miles. Not a turn. Up and down a little bit, but not a turn for 100 miles. That's a long straight stretch. So you can tell it's kind of barren country. But there they go. They had just reached the end of that. They went around the corner, and in a few miles they dropped down into a low spot where there, of all things, was a little river flowing through. And let's see if I can get the video going here. Yeah, so just they drove along a little bit here. You can see that they're simple houses. Nobody has yards of any sort. But there's a lot of brush and saguaro-looking cactus. They're not really saguaro. Their real name is cordon, and they actually grow differently than saguaro does. If you were to understand how or look really close, you'd say, yeah, I can sort of see a difference between them, but it's kind of like, what's the difference between a mouse and a rat? One's bigger than the other, but that's all. Really, there isn't, but that's the way it is. This is the first view of the church that they showed up to that they realized needed some help. A second view, you can see it's in pretty bad shape. These people had taken some poles and stood them up, bought some OSB and sheeted the outside. There's no framework. Those sheets of OSB are attached on each end, and the rest of the sheet just kind of flopping around there. There's nothing holding anything together there. The dirt was piled up around the bottom. The stuff's just rotting apart. So they set to work. Whoops. No, let's see. Yeah, just another picture of it up close. So yeah, pretty bad situation. Inside, it didn't look really bad like that, but if you were to look down low around the edges, you could see a lot of it was rotting away at the bottom, even from the inside. So they got to work. They, of course, didn't get there till afternoon, but they cut all the rotting OSB off the bottom, and they were able to, by dark, even though it doesn't look hardly like they could right now, they were able to get that all completely closed back in before dark. Then after dark, they went into the little town, and they found somebody there who was willing to set them up and make beans and empanadas. Everybody got the same thing. There was no restaurant as such, but just if you want beans and empanadas, here you go. I can make some for you. So they paid her to make beans and empanadas. They came back to the church and unrolled sleeping bags and said, we'll just stay in the church tonight. Next morning they got up and they began covering the whole church in sheets of sheet metal, just 4x8 sheets of sheet metal. And, at first it kind of looked a little ugly, and when I got the first few pictures back, I thought, wow, what are they doing to that thing? But it looks better than the old one did. Inside they started painting away and kept working on it through that day. They didn't quite finish. They had to actually work a third day on it. Out back they built a little retaining wall. They went and bought some concrete blocks because there was a little local hardware store, and they were a little retaining wall in and dig some of that dirt away from it so it wouldn't be in dirt all the time. As the sheet metal got up, they started painting it, and now you can see the inside is all painted up, looking a little bit spiffier. And here's some of the church members with one of our crew. They just wanted to pose for a picture in there. And here it is, all painted up on the outside, looking pretty different than it did when they showed up a couple of days earlier. There's some of the crew standing around the front of the building. Here you've got kind of the shady area. There's a little tree out back there where they could kind of eat lunch underneath that shade. This is the bathroom. It's got a toilet in there that does flush, but only if you dump a bucket of water in it. There's no plumbing to it. They made a clear point to everybody that you only flush it when it's number 2. Otherwise, just let it fill up with number 1, because we don't want to haul water out here all the time. One of the projects that we've done every year, and they set up here in this little town doing the same thing, is giving away reading glasses. And so we go down with big suitcases just full of donated reading glasses. And they set up there, they get some little reading cards that have, big words and little words, and they see what level can you read here, and say, oh, you need reading glasses of this strength or that strength, and they try to find some that the people like. They had one man came in, and the only pair that worked for him was pink, and he just loved them. And then they happened to look down and noticed he was wearing pink shoes. So they thought, well, this is just perfect. So he got pink glasses to go with his pink shoes. But there's a lot of people came in and were just thrilled. We had people that were actually crying when they could start reading things. It's like they had no idea they could see again, and it's hard to imagine. They just thrilled to death for such things. A few pictures of the area around. It was kind of an oasis in the desert. There were just occasional trees here. These people had the biggest bougainvillea I've ever seen in my life. You can't tell it from here, but underneath they've trained it up to where it's about this high off the ground. You can walk around in under it, and it's like a parking garage. There were several cars in there. There were tables set up. People were in there chopping vegetables under the shade of the tree, getting their lunches ready and stuff. It was just quite a community gathering underneath that thing. They were proud to tell us the thing had been there for at least 50 years as far as they knew. So this is the youngest family that was with us. Those are the 2 kids that were helping me with the tile. They went down to the river. Got a picture of that great butte in the background. Man, I want to climb that thing in the worst way, but we'll see if it ever happens. So, as I said, quite a oasis. They actually grew dates there, so they had quite a date setup going. So here's a collage that someone in our group put together, and I thought I'd include it, but there you go, from start to finish. What a huge change. So that's what they did for a few days while I was back laying tile. And of course, we found out on the way back that they stopped at the ice cream shop. But yes.
I noticed the water bottle was hanging from the corner.
That was strictly, yeah, I guess you could see them there, couldn't you? I don't know what I just did, but it's not changing. Oh, here. No? Yeah, there it goes. Those water bottles were just hanging there to catch people's attention, because those eaves are only about this high. And so those were like, don't run into these things. Yeah. So that was just put up there during construction time. I don't think they stay there all the time. But for us, or for our crew, they wanted those water bottles hanging there. So anyway, yeah, there's ice cream stores everywhere. That is one thing they have a lot of, and they have some weird ice creams. And I can't remember any of the really weird ones, but avocado was one of them. And but there were some that were really, really strange. You could get just about everything. My favorite turned out to be one that Heather can guess what my favorite one was. They have the absolute best lemon ice cream I've ever had in my life. It is just unbelievable. Strongest. I mean, it's sweet, but it is really sour at the same time. You just can't do any better. This lady was our head cook. She did not want the job, but our head cook for the last 20 years retired, and she says, well, I'll do it because somebody's got to do it. But oh, she did not want it, and I could tell throughout the week she got quite stressed trying to keep up with everything it took to keep food together. She did have help, but it was just hard for her to stay calm. And so, of course, there were 2 or 3 different nights that we just said, forget it. You're not cooking tonight. We're going out to eat. We were in a very non-tourist location. You could go to almost any restaurant and get a fabulous meal for about $6. So we went out to eat several times. Breakfast, I guess we went out once, maybe twice for breakfast, and at least 3 times for dinner. We went out to eat just because. These little trucks along the road were everywhere. You could buy all kinds of produce. The oranges were grown right there. Orange groves everywhere in the area where we were. So again, there was some water available in the middle of the desert, and they were making mighty good use of it. There were people there that would just, they had these big squeezer things, and they'd cut an orange in half and fill you a glass of orange juice for $1 or so, and it was so good, unbelievable. Those were just some of the really nice treats for being there. The little kitchen we had to work in there's a second church in town that has been there for a long time, and they had this little box of a room that had a short counter with a sink in it, and they actually brought that little stove you can see over there in just for us to use. It's a gas stove, and the 4 burners on top worked, but the oven did not. So when the lady wanted to bake anything, she had to bake it in electric skillets, because that's all we had that she could use to bake in. And so she was really making do with almost nothing, even though it was better than some people have, I suppose. This is one of the mornings, a Sabbath morning, where we had to do our own breakfast. You can see it's just cold cereal, but it works. This is an evening meal, but you can see this little room. We just sat on benches in there to eat. Sometimes we'd go outside, but it actually got a little bit chilly in the evening. You can see several of us wearing jackets, even though others are in shorts. I don't understand the difference, but that's just the way it is. One of the nights we went out to eat. Again, this is actually an Italian restaurant. We had ravioli and fettuccine and all this stuff. $6 a plate, and absolutely delicious food. It was just pretty unreal. You might notice the lampshades are made out of tumbleweeds. The name of the restaurant in Spanish actually was the Tumbleweed. And so, yeah, they must have had some really low wattage lights up there, low voltage or something, because it was pretty spooky looking. But this just happened to be the same day as my birthday, and I had no idea that anybody even knew it was my birthday, because no one said boo. But guess what? They showed up with a piece of cake for me after the dinner was over. and they sang happy birthday in Spanish, and everybody worried about that candle and the tumbleweeds right up above my head. There you go. They even had my name in Spanish on the plate. Happy birthday, Timoteo. So it was very good. On the first Sabbath we were there, the church, of course, was not ready yet for use. So we had church in the patio of the host family. And here you can see people from the church as well as our group gathered, and some song leading going on. Here's potluck afterwards. And then afterwards, one of the church members says, well, I have a fishing boat down at the bay. Maybe you guys would like a ride out into the bay. And it was actually the bay was about 30 miles from where we were, but loaded up and headed to the bay. And he managed to pack about 20 people into that fishing boat, no life vests, and away we went. Saw dolphins and all kinds of things out in the bay. It was pretty cool. Pretty risky. We got back that night. This is the pastor for the churches in the district, and this is his fiance. They have not yet officially announced their engagement. Apparently they have something there that says until you're done with your premarital counseling, you can't officially announce an engagement. So we had an engagement party for them regardless, just because that's the only time we were going to be able to do it. We didn't invite any of the local church members because they have not officially announced this thing. So nobody was supposed to know about it. But we had a little party for them. She is a sweetheart. He is such a friendly guy. We just really, really enjoyed working with him. And I even got to sing a song in Spanish to them. So that's what I'm doing right there. It's called Bésame Mucho, which means kiss me a lot. So yeah, how sweet. One of the other projects we had is what we referred to as door-to-door VBS. And there was a group of about 4 ladies that would put stuff together, and they'd head out, and they're carrying bags full of things with them, and they'd show up they'd look for houses that had kids. And they'd invite the kids out into the yard, and you'll see in the next picture, but they give all the kids little shaker things, maracas or tambourines or whatever, and then they sing 3 or 4 songs in Spanish. They've got a board they hold up, a whiteboard thing that's got all the words on it so that everybody can sing the Spanish words to Jesus Loves Me or Jesus Loves the Little Children or whatever ones they happen to have. And then they would tell a short story. They would then give little things to each of the kids that were like little crafts. This would have been your job, Sherry. They were little crafts that could be left with the kids to work on that day. And then when they came back the next day, they could show their little crafts and what they had done with them. They'd spend about 10 or 12 minutes at a house, and then they'd go to the next house and do the same thing all over again. I'll tell you, after 3 or 4 days, or even less, after 2 days, these kids would come running out. Everybody was getting hugs. You know, they were so happy to see the little VBS crowd show up again. And of course, I didn't think it was quite fair that they all got to do that and I had to lay tile. So one day I snuck away and went with them. But this was the day I was with them. But you can see these kids out here, they're singing Jesus Loves Me or something of that nature right now, shaking their shakers and just having a really good time with it. This lady, she didn't have any kids, but she was like, when they stopped, she was like, she started right in on them. She says, my problem with you Christians is nobody goes to church on the right day. The Bible says you're supposed to go on the 7th day, but nobody does. Well, she was in for a surprise. She was so delighted to find a crowd of people that went to church on the 7th day and to discover that there was a church just 3 or 4 blocks away from her that she hadn't figured out before was worshiping on the Sabbath. And so, of course, they had to go every day and visit with her, and she would shake her tambourine and sing Jesus Loves Me just like any of the rest of them. She was so excited to be a part of that. This is the day I happened to be out on the little trip, so that was good. one other missionary project. We had one lady whose sole job, she did some other things, but this was what her responsibility was to round up things like, these were what we call neighborhood bags. She made these bags up, and on the last day, we went around the neighborhood of the church, giving all the homes around there one of these bags, of course, including an invitation to visit at church and some other little things to read. But these bags would have everything from socks to underwear for kids to pencils and crayons to a little bag of rice and a bag of beans and a bottle of oil, and just, I mean, these things are loaded with just all kinds of stuff. And she would just go shopping day after day after day. Of course, she had a budget to work with that came out of all of our pockets, because everything we did there is self-funded. When you pay to go on this trip, you pay your fee pays for your flight, your airline ticket, pays for your hotel stay. It pays for all these missionary projects. It pays for all the construction materials we need, and even occasionally helps pay for some local help if we need some expertise on whether it's putting in air conditioner unit or something like that. We cover it all with what we pay to go on these trips. So she had a budget to work with, but boy, it's unbelievable how much work it takes to put all these bags together. And it's really fun to go hand them out, because, I mean, people just, they're thrilled to receive them. Here we have just the kids go out in the street, and neighborhood kids come in. You heard me talk about Emiliano. That's how Emiliano became familiar with what was going on in there, is kicking soccer ball around out in the street. So this is what many, many of the streets in Mexico look like, as just plain old dirt. So here we continue the second week. We're on the tile, and people have got the ceiling painted now. The center section is now open. Everybody can work on the center section, and we're keeping them off the outside edges while we're going down there. So we actually pulled it off pretty good, where we were able to work together. Here they're preparing some, because again, we've still got people that didn't have a lot to do, so we said, well, they don't have any concrete around here. Let's pour some patios and sidewalks and stuff. So here they're prepping up some form boards, and there we've got a patio going in between the church and the Sabbath school classrooms. They've always just walked from one to the other through the dirt because there was nothing else there. The open door on the left side there goes into a couple of bathrooms, and the two white doors go into two different classrooms for the children. So this patio turns out to be such a nice thing. There you see the tile finished. The walls and ceiling all painted. Fans put in. Lights are working. You can see window frames, but there's no glass in those windows yet. I'll tell you a little more about those in a minute. Here's the outside, is all painted, but at this point, still no sidewalks around this edge. So the last day on Friday, they form up and decide they're going to pour sidewalks on Friday. And they're off and running. And here you can see, this is actually Sabbath morning, I think. It might still be late Friday afternoon. You can see the sidewalks are poured all the way around the building. There's sidewalks on, patio out back and sidewalks on all three sides. The water out front, that's a leaking sewer pipe. Every house in Mexico has one. Nobody does anything about it. You smell it everywhere you go. You just try not to walk in it. It usually dries up during the night because no one's flushing their toilets, and in the day the water starts bubbling out again everywhere. So that's just something they live with there. Here you can see us gathered inside on that last Friday, getting a group picture. The guy on the far right's the conference treasurer. He and the conference president dropped in on the last day just to tell us thank you for everything. They've managed to do that on most of our trips. They're just a really neat team. We enjoy working with them. This would be on Sabbath morning. We're having church in there for the first time with the finished project. So you see, I had plenty of guys helping me out with guitars. I think the volume's too low to be able to hear that we're singing in Spanish, but we're basically singing the song like the wise man built his house upon the rock, but in Spanish. So there you go. As this comes around, the last person in yellow is the lady who didn't think there was anybody that worshiped on the Sabbath day. There you go. That was her. She was very happy to be there in church with us. This lady is the one that first started this church. This would have been, I don't know how many years ago, actually. But she said that when the church first started, she just had a few neighbors that came and sat under the shade tree in her front yard, and that's where they had church. And she's here worshiping today and just thrilled to death to see the church look like this compared to where it started those years ago. Even ended up with me being the preacher on Sabbath for at least part of the time. I don't know where they got the idea that I could do that, but there I am. I talked in English, and the gal next to me was translating into Spanish. She's the daughter of our fearless leader. She was raised in Colombia, so she also spoke Spanish very fluently. Here we have her dad, now the pastor, that we had in Kennewick years ago. He got up and spoke for a while as well. We kind of split the time that day. But you can see what the church looks like finished. I was going to tell you about these windows. The guys came in at about, I don't know, 2:30 or 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon. We had just poured sidewalks around the church, and they were just firming up. And the guys who were going to install the air conditioners showed up. And they're setting up ladders right on our fresh sidewalks. And they're up there putting these units on the wall. Junk is falling off the walls, you know, where they're blowing holes through the concrete and stuff. I have no idea how, but there is not a mark in the concrete from what they were doing. They kept saying the window guys are supposed to show up. And, you know, it's getting later and later. Here at 6 o'clock, the air conditioner guys are still working away. And about, I don't know, 6:15 or 6:20, something like the sun is sets at almost an hour later than here, so close to 7 was sunset. About 6:15, the window guys show up. No sweat, we'll be done shortly, you know. So they go to work, the air conditioner guys are still working, and by 6:45, everybody's done and gone. I don't know how in the world they did it, but they got it done. So here we are outside afterwards on our new patio, having the first potluck over the new patio. And I call it a potluck. It was a prepared meal. It was chili rellenos. Oh, man, those were good. Gigantic chilies. I mean, those things were that big around, you know, about that long. Just huge things. They gave us plastic forks to eat with, which didn't begin to work. I went back into the little kitchen. Fortunately, I could say enough things in Spanish that I made them understand. I'd sure like something else to cut with. Oh, we got all these plastic knives. It was a whole set, you know, forks, spoons, knives. Oh, well, let me hand the knives out. So we got some knives out there. But I noticed a number of the locals just grab this gigantic chili, and they just take a bite off the end and take another bite off the end. And I thought, well, that's a lot more logical way to eat it. It's just a little hard for me to make myself do it that way. So anyway, this was Sabbath afternoon, standing on the new sidewalks out in front of the church, getting our final group picture. And that pretty much is it for our trip to Mexico mission trip. The next day, they made the 4-hour drive back to the airport, hopped on the plane, and flew home, with the exception of a couple of us who decided to stick around a little longer, and I didn't make that part of my story, but I did stay for an extra 4 days. I went back to the town where we had been the year before, which happens to be right on the beach, the Sea of Cortez, and I rented a little room there and stayed for another 4 days and just kind of did vacationing stuff and enjoyed myself immensely, with the exception of one little thing. The room I happened to rent was about half a block away from the big Spanish or Catholic cathedral that was in town, the old mission. and they felt compelled to have to ring that bell every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day. So I didn't get a lot of sleep while I was there, but I was certainly awake and down by the beach when the sky started to get light. They were the most gorgeous sunrises coming up over the Sea of Cortez that I have ever seen in my life. And so anyway, it was a very, very good trip. I enjoyed it immensely. It's been a real treat to be able to go with this group on several of these outings. And, I mean, there were some parts about it that were a little less than being a missionary, but it made a great vacation, and you felt like you were doing something very worthwhile for some people who could really use the help. So, actually, I guess we did some of those same kind of projects right around here once upon a time, didn't we? It's fun to think back to those days too. I still remember laying the carpet in here with the kids helping me, and even I guess it was during the time that I was doing the floor covering in here that the old church was being dismantled and hauled away. That was a real highlight to be here that day. I didn't get much flooring laid, but I sure got a lot of pictures of the old church being taken apart and loaded up. So, all right. Well, my friends, we have reached the end of that time. I'm going to do the song that I had planned earlier for you as a closing song. While I was in Mexico, I received the sad news of Ed Vern's stroke and eventual death, and I was just, I can't say I was shocked. I mean, we sort of expect these things might happen eventually. This is maybe not going to work. Let's find out. I think it might miss that microphone. Good. Ed Vern, of course, was not only a pillar in the community, certainly, I mean, he's been, living here his whole life, at least awful close to it, right? From 14, wow. So, I mean, he was very, very well known. I'm imagining respected by most. Most of us manage to make somebody along the way who doesn't necessarily respect us as much as we wish they would, but I didn't see that normally. Did I do something to cut off my sound? Oh, okay. When you came up here, I thought, I must not be heard anymore. Aha. So, Ed Vern was one of those guys that just, I was really, really aware of his very, very strong support for the youth ministry that I did. He just always had good things to say for it. He was there when I was struggling with my son's alcoholism. He was just like, I know what you're going through. And he was always a strong support. I appreciated him. When we had a period of time where we thought our VBS was going to shut down, he was one of the guys that really went to bat for us. And I appreciated his role in everything that he did. He's just been a very, very dear friend. I want to sing a song that you know well, but it's a bit of a tribute, I guess. In fact, it is just flat out a tribute to Ed Vern. So let's see. Good thing I put my capo on, because that reminded me to take my pick out of there before I started playing. And you know how it is, because I told you already, I left all my papers somewhere else. I can't even think of the name of the song right now, so give me just a second to compose myself. I think I started on the wrong string. I know your life on earth was troubled. Only you could know the pain. You weren't afraid to face the devil. You were no stranger to the rain. So go rest high on that mountain, for your work on earth is done. Go to heaven a-shouting, love for the Father and the Son. I know, oh, how we cried the day you left us, but we have hope, we believe some sweet day we'll be together, we will live in harmony. So go rest high on that mountain, for your work on earth is done. Go to heaven a-shouting, love for the Father and the Son. Go to heaven a-shouting, love for the Father and the Son. Rest in peace, my friend. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for all you have done for us. You have called us to go out and spread the news that you have a place for us in your home. We look forward to being there someday, but while we're here, may we be of service. May we do everything in our power to give others the hope that we have of a life with you forever. In Jesus' name we pray.